Hello, my name is Kevin Goldsmith. I am the Chief Technology Officer at DistroKid. I am also principal at Nimble Autonomy. And today I'm recording a rehearsal of my talk from Friction to Function, which I'm about to present at LeadDev New York 2025. I'm planning to release this separately in case folks are interested. This talk is about how product and engineering as functions can get into disagreements and then how to resolve that. If you're an engineering manager or a dev lead or anybody in engineering management, I'm pretty sure you've heard from a developer in your team or some other developer you've talked to, product won't let us work on tech debt. Or if you may have heard from a product peer, engineering is slowing us down. They're taking too long to do everything by working on stuff that's not important. This friction comes up in almost every company I've worked in. Startups, Microsoft, Spotify, Adobe, you name it. And it's a serious problem because engineering and product are a partnership. Alignment is absolutely critical. It's critical to your team's happiness and success, and it's critical to the business that you're in. When product and engineering, when that relationship falters, delivery slips, which results in missed opportunities for the business, quality degrades, which presents customer pain, morale drops, which results in team disengagement. You hear from developers, I don't know why we're doing what we're doing. I don't know how it's connected to any of the things I'm hearing about in the company town hall. Or you hear that the product team is just telling us what to do. They're not involving us in the discussion. We aren't part of the decision making. That is autonomy and purpose, which are two of the three pieces of what Daniel Pink calls the drivers of motivation. In my own experience, in my own career, I've seen this go exceptionally bad. At a prior company, I was hired because of my B2C experience as well as my B2B. The company was a B2B company and was really interested in building this new platform that was going to be aimed at B2C. And so they wanted someone with B2C expertise. My product peer came from a B2B background. We started working on this platform, and one of the reasons I was really excited to join the company was because this was a greenfield opportunity. There was nobody in the space, and the company was uniquely positioned to really make the right product for this market. They knew the market. They already had goodwill amongst the potential customers. It was a perfect situation. So we start working on this platform, and it starts to become obvious. Our differences in experience started us leading teams in opposite directions. And it wasn't a personal disagreement. We got along really well and we respected each other. It was a great working relationship. But what started to happen would be that my peer would see something a team was doing and give them feedback. And then I would see what they were doing separately and then give them very different feedback. And the team started to go back and forth. They didn't know who to listen to. And we were building an organization. My peer was hiring folks from his network. So very much B2B product managers. And I was hiring B2C engineering managers. And so that disconnect went all the way down into the organization and caused a lot of friction between the teams. And we wasted months on trying to build this platform, and just the lack of alignment created a lot of problems for the team. We got to the market really late, and by the time we got there, this little tiny startup that was sort of on the edge of the market also had seen this opportunity, and they were able to move in and build the right product for that market and really take over that greenfield. And that company is worth billions today. This was a multi-billion-dollar miss. And it wasn't just product and engineering alignment that was a problem, but it was a significant part of the problem. I've thought a lot about how this happens and why it happens. And I've come to the realization that the primary problem is that product and engineering are judged on different metrics. And this is universal challenges across startups and enterprise. Product and engineering have different success metrics. Product lives and dies by conversion, activation, retention. Engineering lives and dies by uptime, bugs, and cycle time. Security. Both matter, but being judged on different scorecards is what drives that tension. When the friction starts to arise, how do you recognize it? You'll hear it from your team, or you'll feel these things yourselves. You'll hear about the team having its priorities shifted without tech input. The product team talks to the sales team, makes a commitment for delivery without involving engineering. And you hear from your team, we made a commitment to a date. We have no idea how we're going to make this date. Nobody talked to us about how long this would take. Or you'll hear about tech debt being deprioritized because the product team doesn't see the immediate return on investment. You'll hear about decision-making disconnects. The product and engineering teams start to really feel like they're not in the same rooms. They're in completely different discussions. Now let's talk solutions. Here are 4 practices that can help. The first technique is balanced prioritization. So this is a graph. We engineers, we like graphs. The rest of the business likes 4 quadrant maps, which is also a graph, but they call it different because that's what McKinsey calls it. But in this graph / quadrant map, you have on the horizontal axis, business impact, and on the vertical axis, technical sustainability. Now, we in engineering, the metrics we're judged on are on the top half of this graph. We care about business impact, but if we're not delivering on technical sustainability, we're not doing our jobs. Similarly, the product team, they care a lot about the right-hand side of this graph, and they also care about technical sustainability, but if they don't deliver on business impact, very similarly, they're out of a job. So next time you have a sprint planning meeting, put every epic or story on this grid. It forces the team to acknowledge both sides of the trade-off. And hopefully you have a reasonable distribution. If everything ends up in that upper right quadrant, that's the ideal world. You're doing great. Everything is both business impact and technical sustainability. If things end up in the bottom right quadrant, that's okay. It can be okay. And you can do that for a little while, but that definitely means that you are prioritizing business impact over technical sustainability. And you can't do that for too long because what'll start to happen is you're writing checks for your future selves that they may not be able to cash. And that will eventually really hurt the product. We understand the problems of accumulated tech debt. Similarly, your stories may end up in the upper left-hand quadrant. And again, that is a good thing sometimes, and you can do that for a little while, but that isn't sustainable in the long term. You might be solving technical sustainability, but without some business impact, you might have a great product, but the business is not going to be around to sustain it. So you need a balance. And of course, if you end up with your stories in the bottom left-hand corner, I don't know what you're doing, and I have a pretty strong feeling you don't know either. Now let's talk about the next tool, which I call structured participation. If you can put a number on reliability in terms of retention or revenue, product will care just as much as you do. You have to translate your technology concerns into business impact. The rest of the company, all the other functions, they talk in terms of business numbers. Retention, activation, conversion, growth, churn. These are metrics that the product team talks about, the marketing team talks about, sales talks about, operations talks that way, finance talks that way. The entire rest of the business is talking in terms of business metrics and revenue. When engineering comes into the discussion and you're trying to make an argument to your product peer and you're saying, we really need to focus on this technical debt, it's going to really hurt the product. It's really going to cause problems, or it's starting to slow us down. That sounds not like a business discussion. That sounds like feels. That sounds like opinion. And your product peer may ask you, oh yeah, no, I totally can understand that. We have this commitment to the sales team, that's attached to revenue if we can deliver this feature. If we don't address the technical sustainability problem you're pointing out, is this going to affect that? And the answer is no. It's going to be a problem eventually, and the longer we wait, the worse of a problem it's going to be. But no, if we finish this feature, like, no. So then the natural thing is to say, well, let's finish the feature then, and we'll look at this tech debt problem later. And of course, it's always later. So figuring out how to turn those real concerns into the language the rest of the business can understand is absolutely important. In my own experience, when we were at Spotify, we were having a debate like this. The number of crashes in the mobile app was starting to climb, and there was a lot of concern about that. Another part of the team said, you know what? No, it's definitely a problem, but we don't see this affecting our business metrics. So it's a problem, but it's not an immediate problem. This discussion went back and forth, and it wasn't getting resolved. And then a very smart product manager decided to put an experiment into the field. And that team ran an experiment where they deliberately crashed the app a certain number of times for different cohorts. And they figured out how many times in a day they would need to crash the app before people would start canceling their subscriptions. Because we knew exactly how much money a subscription was worth to the company. That's lifetime value. It's a known business metric. So when you cancel your subscription, when you churn, we know how much money the company is losing. So then we could put that tech debt, that quality debt, we could put a number on it. And then we could know if the number of crashes was creeping up to a certain point, that's probably okay. After that point, it starts to cost money, and we can tell you how much. So if we're trying to weigh working on quality versus working on a new feature, if that new feature is estimated to generate more revenue than we would lose by possibly the quality crossing one of those lines, we could make a business decision. But once that quality degraded to the point that we knew people were canceling subscriptions, we knew we had to prioritize that quality. Now, you don't need to crash your app. I want to be clear. But you can quantify the business costs of tech debt using historical data. You have tons of data, hopefully, on what's happened when the bug counts have reached a certain point, and you can look at what the product metrics were, or the business metrics were, or what that did to your cycle time, how long it took to release a feature as your tech debt started to creep up because the code was harder to understand or increase the number of bugs. And then you can relate that back to business number. That delay in releasing a feature, that costs the company money. When a feature is planned, there is some financial modeling that is done to estimate how much revenue that feature will bring to the product, or that new product will bring. And so the cost of delay just shifts that revenue out into later in the year, which means that you can say how much money the company will lose in this quarter or in this fiscal year by the delay caused by the team not being able to ship as quickly because of technical debt. You can find ways to put a business discussion or business data onto your technical sustainability concerns, and that lets you speak the language that the rest of the company has. And when you do your planning, you can present the cost of delay for your tech debt stories right alongside the feature estimates, which then gives you, as an advocate on the engineering side, a way to quantify the importance of a tech debt story relative to a new feature story or a business impact story. Let's talk about uniting with metrics. Now, I talked about how the product team and the engineering team are responsible for related but different metrics. So what does that mean within the team? It means one product team is pushing towards one set of metrics and the other is pushing towards the other. The team can own both sets of metrics. The whole team, product and engineering, every member of the team can agree on a set of metrics for both engineering and product that the team will own together and make those metrics related. So we just talked about retention versus reliability when I talked about Spotify. Other good metrics to pair: conversion and performance. Performance has an impact on conversion. So if a team is focused on conversion, you can use performance as another important metric that the team owns, including the product manager. Time to market. We all want to get our features to market as quickly as possible. If we go too fast, what happens? The defect rate goes up. So the team can own both the defect rate and time to market. And if one goes below the guardrail, we're shifting to focus on that, whether it is the business impact metric or the technical sustainability metric. The next tool is practices for partnership. Now, I hear a lot from engineering managers about how the product team is making decisions and they're not talking to us. And I will ask them, okay, what is that not talking to you? They don't invite us to their meetings. They talk about it in their meetings and we're not invited. Have you asked to attend their meetings? We wait to get invited. We are hoping that they know to involve us in the decision making. My experience, especially in growing organizations, both product and engineering, as the organization grows, you can start to have conversations within your function that involve a lot of people and feel like you've talked to everybody and not realize you've missed the other functions. At a prior company, as the company grows, we traditionally had really good partnerships between product and engineering, and it was starting to suffer. And we were hearing about product making decisions without including the engineering peers. The product team had a weekly meeting where all the senior product leadership met to discuss status and what was going on and look a little bit ahead. And I talked to the person who organized that meeting and I asked, hey, is it okay if I can attend that meeting, just be a fly on the wall? I'm not going to add agenda items. I'm not planning to speak. I just want to be there so that I can hear what you're planning and I can let the engineering leadership know. And that way we understand what's going on and we'll be able to support it. Now, no one's going to say no to that. It's a very reasonable request. So I started to attend the weekly senior product leadership meeting. I was just there. I wasn't trying to assert myself in discussions. I was just attending. But by the fact that an engineering leader was in the room, the product team would ask me questions. Hey, Kevin, what do you think of this from the engineering perspective? One, that allowed us to get engineering perspective into these discussions. But two, it also gave me a way to make sure that the engineering leadership was aware of what the product team was planning. So if there was something that they thought they needed to give input on, they could be proactive. And of course, we were having engineering meetings that product wasn't invited into and making decisions without including them. So one of the things I did was we had senior engineering leadership offsites where we talk about strategy and look at the current state of the organization. I started to make sure that we invited our product peers to some of those meetings so that we could have the conversation with them as well. Because it was one thing to insert engineering into product discussions, we had to do the other side as well. So that's how you build transparency in both ways. Now, another thing that will help is just having regular alignment rituals. That is a nice way of saying, talk to your product peer. But that includes things like one-on-ones. I will tell you that the person I spend the most amount of time with in my company is my product peer. And that is, we have one-on-ones, our directs meet with us and we do syncs together, our senior leadership teams. We are in a ton of other meetings together. We talk with each other all the time. And what that means is we very much will see when we are in alignment and out of alignment. And when we're out of alignment, we can discuss it. Doesn't necessarily mean we're always going to agree, but we can very much understand each other's perspective. So that's a very important part, is taking the time to make sure we're aligned. And when we're out of alignment and talking to our teams and we realize that we're out of alignment, that gives us lots of opportunities to call each other on it and get back into alignment. If you're mapping your stories and epics on the technical sustainability versus business impact matrix, you're creating transparency within the team on the compromises that you're making in your stories. It's also exceptionally important to make that transparent outside your team, so the teams around you know the explicit compromises you're making. Because if you've hit the guardrail on your technical sustainability metric and the team is now focused on that from outside the organization or outside your team, no one sees new business impact stories being delivered. And they start to wonder what your team is doing. So when you're putting that focus on business impact, make it clear both inside and outside the organization that we are making an explicit trade-off here. We're focusing on business impact. We know that's going to create a problem for technical sustainability. So expect that in the near future, we're going to be focusing on technical sustainability. Or we're focusing on technical sustainability right now. We have some concerns about these very specific metrics. We anticipate this work to go on for this long, and then we'll be back to trying to focus on a balance between business impact and technical sustainability. So make that transparent both inside and outside your team. Now, if you can do that, you start to build mutual trust, certainly between you as an engineering leader and your product peer, but within the team as well. You can now get into a situation where you can cover for each other. You can represent the peer in meetings, for example, because if I and my product peer are in strong alignment, I know that if I'm not in a meeting, my product peer can represent the engineering or technology team. And similarly, if I'm in a meeting without my product peer, he knows I can represent his team because we have spent so much time talking about things. And it doesn't mean that we're in 100% agreement, but it means that we both know that we will call out what the other's position is just to make sure people understand, and then we can talk about it later. And so that gives us the opportunity to be in multiple places at once. And that's very helpful. If all these things are happening and you're modeling them as leaders, hopefully you're starting to build a sense of psychological safety within your team. The engineers on your team must feel safe if they're to raise concerns. And if you and your product peer are modeling a good alignment and good relationship, hopefully that's the case. If you're trying these things, but you're still missing that psychological safety, and you and your product peer cannot resolve the issue, you need to escalate it. And you need to escalate it up to whatever point it is where you can resolve it. Because if that psychological safety isn't present in the team, if the developers can't ask questions, can't challenge, can't present their opinions, you're going to be in a lot of trouble. Everything else you're doing is not going to be helpful. So make sure you resolve that. You won't fix product and engineering friction with one big meeting. You fix it in the small moments by putting stories on the matrix, by framing tech debt as a business risk, and by showing up in each other's spaces. Next time you're with your team, try just one thing. At your next planning session, map an epic on the business versus sustainability matrix. See what conversation it sparks. That is how alignment begins. Thank you. I hope this talk has been helpful. If you want to reach out to me, I am pretty much my name on every social network, but the network I tend to spend the most time on these days is Blue Sky. So that's usually the easiest way to get a hold of me. If you're having friction with product and engineering teams and you try these things and they work great, I'd love to hear it. If you try these things and they don't work, I would love to hear that too. I hope this has been helpful. Thanks a lot.